Quick little note on divine timing and Saturn on a realization that I just had. I was going through these videos, okay? And because here's the thing, as a chronic Capricorn, I cannot just hear spiritual fluff and go, yeah, that makes sense to me. I believe that. It has to get to a point where something in my physical reality has happened to make me embody that concept, and then I can apply the physical reality to the spiritual. Like, I have to have had it manifest physically in order for me to understand the concept, okay? And so I was going through I was editing the videos that I just made earlier today that will have already been posted because I schedule them out in advance. And I realized a little bit about divine timing because I'm watching these videos and I'm like, oh, I am actually expressing the way that I like to and want to and wish to express. Like, not necessarily, I think I'll always be a little insecure about the ADHD tangents and the difficulty like organizing words, but I am actually expressing the concepts in the way that I want to express these concepts more than I thought I could. Like, I was watching and I was like, this actually feels like a really authentic way for me to express these concepts. Whereas before, it just felt like, I feel like I've been working on how forced it feels for me to express concepts. And a lot of that is because it is actually very nerve-wracking and difficult to express in a public way. But I've been trying for years and years and years because I know that, like, I just feel like that's the way my soul wants to express, okay? I've got a 3rd house stellium. I've got Saturn in the 5th house, and I'm just now finishing up my Saturn return, which actually adds so much context to this and the concept of divine timing and how Saturn and divine timing go together so well, because I'm literally like degrees. Well, so technically my Saturn return is done if you want to go with like strict 5-degree orbs or 3-degree orbs or whatever people go with. But I do believe the idea that if it's in the house and the sign, like if it's still in, I use whole sign, okay? And I do subscribe to the idea that if the planet is still in, especially if it's a generational planet, like a long lasting, like it's a planet that stays in a sign for years, then I do subscribe to the idea that while it's still in the sign, you're still going to have essentially like effects of that planet being in that sign. So, you know, Saturn's about to move out of Pisces and into Aries. So I feel like I am on the last legs, and it does feel very much like it is applicable to my life that I am on the last legs of my Saturn return. And so this whole concept of divine timing, I've been trying to figure out how to express myself and how to create via expressing myself with communication for years now, years and years and years, okay? And it's always been like, so for the last like year or so, I've had the understanding that, you know, I've been like working and complaining and working and complaining about how I have such a hard time expressing myself. And I've been operating under the understanding that, you know, divine timing is at play or whatever. And I just realized as I'm watching these videos that like divine timing is not fucking in any sense of the stretch like spiritual fluff, okay? Like divine timing is just simply the amount of time that it takes for people, like our brains naturally need to do the thing and then rest and absorb and then learn some more and then integrate and then peel back layers of conditioning and then integrate some more, because there was never going to be, it just simply wasn't going to happen that I was going to be able to just express what goes on in my brain right out the gate. Especially like I spent the first long stretch of my life having all these thoughts and not expressing them, not talking to anyone about them. So and that's like what I honestly freak out about, and like what I get really upset about all the time is that I have all these thoughts that go on in my head, and I try really hard to express them in a way that makes sense in words, and I have such a hard time doing it. Okay? And as I'm watching these videos, I'm like, okay, I'm actually starting to be able to express the ideas going on in my head in a way that makes sense, and in a way that I feel like isn't ADHD moving in a billion different directions in a way that only makes sense in my head. And that the only way that that happened is just through me continuously doing it, like trying to continuously express myself. And then like that, the natural process of the brain is when your brain learns something new, or like does something new or takes in new information, it has to have space to be able to integrate that information. It has to be able to have like a resting period or a period of absorption, because if we just constantly are forcing our brains to do things, like do new things all the time, they're not going to have any time to absorb and process that information. So the only way that I could get better at expressing myself was through doing it, and then in absorbing and integrating, and then like for long periods of time, and then learning more information. And also a lot, if anybody else wants to communicate and like has aspirations to express themselves creatively in some way, I noticed that one thing for me for sure is definitely like priorities, like my authentic priorities, because I do not prioritize perfection or quality in any way. Like perfection and quality of like visuals and stuff like that is not my top priority. My top priority is authentically communicating my unique ideas. Okay? So my top priority has to be authentically communicating my unique ideas. Most of my energy goes to authentically communicating my unique ideas. And, you know, at this point, I would say that an unconscious priority was to not piss anybody off, to not offend people. And then I just realized that like there's absolutely no way this day and age to not offend anyone. There's nothing I can do about that. People will always try to find a way to be upset. No matter what you say, there's always going to be somebody who finds a reason to be upset. So I can't do anything about that. But the way that the perfectionism and the trying not to upset people or stir up conflict was subconsciously prioritized was limiting my ability to actually express myself authentically. And there was no way for me to just know that. Like, even though I knew that, even though I intellectually knew that, there was no way for me to just go, oh, I guess this is true. I guess this is true now. So I feel like I'm realizing that the concept of divine timing is just that, yeah, it actually, you can't just intellectually know something. You actually have to move through the process in order to fully embody that thing. Otherwise, you can intellectually know whatever you want, and that's why we have the term armchair expert. It's like people who love to, and some people are meant to do this, okay, man? If that's what your divine spark wants to do, then that's what your divine spark wants to do. Chill. But the term armchair expert, which means like people who are constantly absorbing information about a subject, they're getting more and more details about the subject, but they never actually put those details into practice. So they don't actually have practical application of the subject. All they have is a bunch of useless details. And it's kind of like that, where it's like, I'm realizing that the concept of divine timing is so deeply connected with Saturn, because the only way to actually get from point A to point B is to move through the process. And I feel like when spiritual people say divine timing is going to be different depending on X, Y, and Z, it's like, yeah, like how willing or how conscious are we of what is happening, and like how resistant are we? Like, is it possible that if I had put more energy into not caring about perfectionism, that I would be able to express myself way easier, way sooner? I don't know. Probably not, though. Like, it probably is like it had to play out the way it had to play out, although who knows? This is pretty short, but I'm actually going to stop it here because I don't feel like I have anything else to say. Thanks, bye.